Finally, the time of unity, liberty, and prosperity has come. That long-awaited time is announced in the book of courage, lucidity, and hope.
My name is Yacouba FASSASSI. I am a citizen from Benin Republic, a senior economist of the International Monetary Fund, IMF, in Washington, D.C., retired. I am an international consultant and a businessman. The IMF had affected me to serve in Benin, and in that position, I had been the special advisor to the first two head of state of the Republic of Benin of the democratic renewal era for 15 years. My latest book, published in Paris, France, by Éditions L'Harmattan, concerns the CFA FRANC and regional integration with a single currency within the economic community of West African states, ECOWAS. This book was born from an observation and the belief of the economist that I am. What is the observation? African countries of the CFA FRANC zone are individually and collectively less developed than all other African countries, in particular English-speaking countries. The belief is that these African countries belonging to the CFA FRANC zone will continue inexorably the economic and social regression, all things marked by deepening poverty and abject misery. At this stage, there will be no more government, no more democracy. Instead, there will be anarchy and general sauve-qui-peut. I want to stress that it is not a mere threat or, as in bullfighting, a red cloth thrown in the face of our leaders to scare them. No, it is the reality that is emerging and that is inevitable if very quickly the French-speaking countries do not break intelligently with the CFA FRANC system and engage resolutely on the path to a regional and monetary integration with a single currency, freely fought, honestly deliberate, and voluntarily assumed with full responsibility. In other words, the choice is between monetary and federal integration or death of our CFA FRANC zone states. My beliefs were formed during my economist course, not only as a theoretician of macroeconomics and monetary economics, but also and especially in the fire of action, be it in my various positions in France, Benin, the United States of America at the IMF, Senegal at the Central Bank of West African States, headquarters, DCAO, Morocco, Nigeria, Ghana, Uganda, to name just a few countries. Indeed, as a young researcher at the University of Paris 9, Dauphine, where I got my first PhD degree in 1978, I had the luck and the happiness to be part of different groups of study and research alongside French, British, and German economists, in which we have prepared reports Optica 1, Optica 2, and Europa that formed the intellectual architecture for the birth of the single European currency. The European countries of the Eurozone should constitute ultimately an optimal currency area with the fulfillment of the convergence criteria and fiscal federalism that can raise the level of economic and social development of the less developed countries of the area. This explains the massive funding available to countries such as Greece and other less developed countries of the zone. African countries that have decided to peg irreversibly the CFA franc to the euro are registered in the second division of the eurozone. As such, they cannot receive assistance from the European Central Bank, ECB. Rather, they are willing victims of the euro. If Europe has managed to create its single currency to make the most of the wide saving benefits of any regional economic and monetary integration, why the French countries of West Africa, we share a common history, a common culture, and a common civilization, in particular the ECOWAS countries, cannot have their own single currency. Especially the ECOWAS region is closer than Europe as an optimal currency area, Optica. In other words, ECOWAS is a better candidate than Europe to have a single currency. The French colonizers, by creating on December 25, 1945, the CFA franc of the French colonies of Africa, had made a useful work by putting together its colonies and by giving them the same currency as it imposed on them at the beginning of the assimilation colonization era, the same language, the French language. But today, we can see that the CFA franc has lived, and as a colonial relic, it must now be changed, and the French colonies should sing, "Free at last! God Almighty, we are free at last." Indeed, the euro to which the CFA franc is pegged is not the currency of foreign trade of our countries. In fact, for the trade, the Nigerian currency, the naira, is much more relevant for those French countries than the CFA franc or euro. The colonial currency, the CFA franc, no longer corresponds to any economic reality of our countries. On analysis, the CFA franc has become an operating system to deprive the poorest countries and the neediest of the world of the hardly earned wealth. A systematic transfer system to the French treasury of foreign currency, dollar, euro, yen, hardly earned from commodities and services exports of our countries. Through the system of the CFA franc, African countries enrich France by depleting and impoverishing themselves. The President of the French Republic, and not the least, had the intellectual honesty to recognize this fact, the harsh reality which is unsustainable and increasingly unbearable by our people, and incredibly dehumanizing to all human beings. President François Mitterrand said in 1994, I quote, "Early this year, they will continue to steal Africans. The Africans are constantly depleted. In 1994, there will be even more African capital flows to developed countries than the reverse." End of quote. President Jacques Chirac, pulling the alarm about the disastrous consequences of the CFA franc on African economies in 2012, said this, I quote, "You forget one thing. It is that part of the money that is in our wallet comes precisely from exploitation for centuries of Africa. So you need a little bit of common sense and justice to give back to Africans what has been taken from them, as much as it is necessary if we are to avoid the worst convulsions or difficulties with the political consequences that it entails in the near future." End of quote. The former president of Niger, Mahaman Usman, said, I quote, "Do you have a quiet sleep in the years to come if you do not commit the break with the CFA franc system?" End of quote. As for the former Senegalese president, Abdoulaye Wade, he bravely claimed in 2007 that, I quote, "France returns to the African countries of the France CFA zone the money that France every day takes from them." End of quote. And he added, "The money of the African people blocked in the French treasury has to be repatriated to Africa to profit the economies of the states of the BCAO." He added, I quote, "We cannot have billions and billions placed in foreign stock markets and say at the same time we are poor and continue to beg for money." And President Wade concludes by describing the CFA franc zone as, I quote, "a zone for profit export," end of quote. And he adds, I quote, "This is an area in which those who make money in the morning export it at night," end of quote. The CFA franc system has condemned forever African countries to remain the neediest and poorest on the planet Earth. From the above, one can easily see that the disappearance of our French African states is no longer a theoretical hypothesis. For now, the ravage of the CFA franc pegged to the euro are more visible through the increase of the shadow and underground economy. There will be, at the end of this process, a suffocation of a state, which will, in the meantime, weaken and smother the state when it can no longer cope with the sovereign expenditures. It means that tax revenues will gradually be reduced to a trickle with the gradual disappearance of formal sector of the economy. Then France will propose a new devaluation of the overvalued CFA franc. That devaluation in the offing could fix the new rate of a CFA franc to 15,000 CFA franc for €1. This will be the great impasse, the deadlock, a real economic and social tsunami that will sweep its way and destroy any political system and break the backbone of African government in the FRANC zone. It is no longer an hypothesis of economists, a mere forecasting, a red rag stirred at front of our head of state. It is certainty based itself on the power of economics. To avoid this collective shipwreck of African economies in the FRANC zone that could happen over the next 10 years, at the border of Nigeria, there is only one solution: the economic and monetary regional integration with a single currency. As for the future, we must courageously assume it, and our governments should clearly and resolutely engage on the road to the future by responsibly and knowingly take the path to a regional and monetary integration. Freely thought, ardently desired, and wisely assumed. I must emphasize here and now that our head of states have become aware that they will never succeed in taking their people out of ambient misery and abject poverty because of the CFA franc, despite the laudable efforts that most of them do every day to build modern nations. The different presidents of the Republic who have succeeded at the head of our country, Benin Republic, since the beginning of the democratic renewal, have worked hard to make Benin a better place, a country where life is good. Having worked closely with the heads of state, I am a lively and privileged witness to declare that they could not do more in the straitjacket that is the CFA franc. They did not have the financial means or the ambition for our motherland. Similarly, the current head of state toils for that Benin to become a country truly emergent. He has great ambition for our country, Benin, but the CFA franc system does not allow him to realize his dreams for Benin. One must acknowledge him to have done much with so few resources in a poor country like Benin. President Boni Yayi was not unworthy, far from it. Benin is not Greece to get the favors of the European Central Bank, ECB, and the massive funding of the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the European Union. The same is true for other African CFA FRANC countries, which are second-class members of the Eurozone with CFA FRANC pegged to the Euro. African countries of the FRANC zone should jump on the bandwagon of the single currency of ECOWAS, the ECO currency, the single currency that English-speaking countries of ECOWAS and Guinea-Conakry have set in motion with the headquarters of the central bank in Accra, Ghana. There is no other solution. Monetary integration is a global movement. Europe has understood this. America had understood it. Asia is preparing, and West Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, and other countries outside the CFA FRANC country have already established the second monetary zone of ECOWAS, called WAMZ, West African Monetary Zone. If the CFA FRANC countries are slow to join this monetary integration movement, this our country, Benin, may be sandwiched with an accentuation of the already heavy impoverishment. The break with the CFA FRANC system should not be understood as a break with France. We should rather bring France to accompany the birth of a single currency of ECOWAS. The break with the CFA FRANC system should not be understood as a monetary aventurism where each of the FRANC zone countries may decide to issue its own currency. It would be suicidal for the economy of each and all. Furthermore, and finally, it is the real economy which will collapse in a short time. Indeed, as if the misfortunes of the CFA FRANC pegged to the euro were not enough, the kill, the coup de grâce, in short, the fatal KO to Benin Republic's economy will come from the real economy with the construction by Nigeria and on the border of Benin Republic in Badagry, the largest deep water port in all of Africa. The work of this port of Badagry on over 1,200 hectares of land and for a total cost of over $2 billion will start in September 2015, in 1 month. Thus, the port of Cotonou, the only lung of our national economy, will gradually die a more beautiful death since becoming redundant and less relevant. Then what to do? Just quickly break away with the nostalgic policy to serve the master and his outside interests, and let us jumpstart with a new governance based on Benin Republic's best interest by the Beninese and for the Beninese. Altogether, I reiterate my faith in an ECOWAS of people, a federal ECOWAS with a single currency. This is the only way out. There is none else. I end with a challenge to anyone, politician or other, who can convince me that Benin Republic, our country, can escape misery and poverty without breaking with the CFA system. And very quickly, Otherwise, in a few years, the economy of Benin will disappear. The immediate consequence of this is the worsening of humanitarian and economic conditions in the West African sub-region. At this point, Nigeria's security is at stake, since Nigeria could not continue thus to be an island of prosperity in a desert of global poverty and despair. I suggest a quick break but smart passing by the surety of France for an ECOWAS powerful, united and bilingual, setting the stage for a very profitable partnership for France. All of these are detailed and articulated and documented with different scenarios in my book that is for sale online and in bookstores. Thank you for your kind attention.